Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're diving into a topic that's super important to us here in the Philippines. Republic Act 111228.
Ah, yes.
Now, this act's all about healthcare, but with a really specific focus, right? Healthcare for persons with disabilities, or as we often say, PWDs.
That's right.
And, it's a big step forward in creating a society where everyone can be healthy and access the care they need.
Definitely. It's a huge step in the right direction.
And even just thinking about the daily challenges that PWDs face when it comes to healthcare, trying to navigate the system. This law feels like it's making a real difference.
Absolutely.
And it starts right off the bat with Section 1, guaranteeing automatic PhilHealth coverage for every PWD. That's huge. So can you maybe break down what PhilHealth is and what this automatic coverage means for PWDs?
Sure. So PhilHealth is the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. It's basically our national health insurance program, right? And automatic coverage. Well, that means that every PWD, no matter what, they're automatically enrolled and eligible for all the healthcare benefits that come with it.
So no more applications, no more worries about getting denied. They're just in.
Exactly. Just like that.
That's got to be a huge relief for so many people. But, I'm thinking a program this big, it must take a lot of funding to make it work. Where does the money come from for all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the act actually lays out that a good chunk of the funding comes from what we call the sin tax.
The sin tax. Okay, remind me what that is again.
Right. So the sin tax is basically the revenue the government gets from taxes on things like alcohol and tobacco products. It's all outlined in Republic Act 10351.
Okay, right. Now I remember. So it's kind of like using funds from things that can potentially harm your health to actually improve healthcare access for PWDs. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you could say there's a certain poetic justice there.
Yeah, for sure. But, even beyond the funding, what really strikes me about this act is that it's not just about getting people coverage. It's about making sure they get the right kind of care.
Absolutely.
Like in Section 1, it even says that PhilHealth has to actually develop specialized healthcare packages that are specifically tailored to the unique needs of different PWDs.
Exactly. It's not just a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. It recognizes that healthcare needs to be personalized, especially for PWDs.
Yeah, it's like we're moving away from that generic approach to healthcare and really focusing on the individual. It makes you think, what kind of healthcare needs are unique to different disabilities?
That's a really important question.
Right, and the act kind of forces us to think about those differences. Because, like someone with a visual impairment, they're going to have totally different requirements than, say, someone with a physical disability.
Exactly. And the law is prompting us to consider all those needs.
Yeah, really consider them. So moving on to Section 2 now. This section seems to be all about making sure that this act isn't just some well-meaning document, but that it actually works in the real world. It talks about setting up a whole monitoring and evaluation process. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Section 2 lays out this whole system for monitoring and evaluating how the act is being implemented and what kind of impact it's having.
Okay.
And it's not just one agency doing this by themselves. It involves a bunch of different groups, right? You've got various government agencies, local government units. Those are basically your local government bodies.
Right.
And even non-governmental organizations.
Really, NGOs too.
Yeah, they all work together to make sure this thing is actually working.
So it's like a real team effort to make sure the law is actually making a difference where it matters.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, what kind of role does data play in all this?
Yeah.
You're talking about monitoring and evaluation. That's got to involve data, right?
Oh, absolutely. Data is key to this whole thing. So the Department of Health, the DOH, they're tasked with keeping this really comprehensive and up-to-date database of all PWDs in the country. And it's not just their names and contact info, right? It also includes their specific healthcare needs.
So that's how they track progress, figure out where there might be gaps in services.
Exactly.
And make sure that the resources, the money, the support, it's all going to the right places.
You got it. And it also helps to keep everyone accountable.
It's like a built-in feedback loop.
Yeah.
Constantly checking in to see what's working, what needs to be adjusted. That's smart.
Yeah, the act is really proactive about making sure it stays relevant and effective. Because, things change. The needs of PWDs might evolve over time.
Sure.
And the act recognizes that. It's all about adapting and making sure that the support is always there.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to move on to Section 3, which seems to be all about the nuts and bolts of actually putting this act into action. What can you tell us about the implementation plan?
All right, well, Section 3, it lays out a pretty clear timeline for getting things done. It says that the implementing rules and regulations, or IRR, which are basically like a set of guidelines for how the act will actually be carried out,
Right.
those have to be developed within 3 months of the act taking effect.
Wow, 3 months. That's a pretty tight deadline.
It is, but it's necessary to make sure things move quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, I can see that. So it's about speed, but is it just about speed?
No, it's definitely not just about rushing through it. The Act also stresses how important collaboration is in developing those IRRs. So PhilHealth, the DOH, and other stakeholders, they all have to work together to make sure it's done right.
So it's making sure that everybody's voice is heard, that all the perspectives are considered.
Exactly. That way, the IRR is as strong as it can be.
It sounds like this act is really serious about not just enacting change, but making sure the change actually happens.
You got it. It's about creating a system that works for PWDs, that's responsive to their needs. And that's what makes it such a significant step forward here in the Philippines. It's all about creating a healthcare system that's truly inclusive and accessible to everyone.
It sounds like it.
It's really impressive how this act gets into the details of implementation. Like in Section 20A, which actually amends the Magna Carta for persons with disabilities to include these new provisions about automatic PhilHealth coverage.
Okay, let's break that down a little. The Magna Carta for persons with disabilities, that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a really important law that's all about protecting the rights and well-being of PWDs. And Section 20A basically updates it to include this new stuff about PhilHealth coverage.
So it's like building on top of an existing framework to create this even more comprehensive system of support for PWDs. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the key details outlined in this Section 20A?
Well, first off, it makes it crystal clear that the coverage is universal. Every single PWD is eligible, no matter what type of disability they have or how severe it is.
So there's no room for confusion, no chance of anyone being excluded. Everyone's covered.
Exactly. No one's left behind. And then it gets into the specifics of how the premium contributions work. Who pays for all of this?
Right. Because someone's got to pay for it. So how does that work?
Well, they've got this shared responsibility model, which I think is really smart because it recognizes that funding something this big, it's going to take a team effort.
Okay, I'm interested to hear more about this shared responsibility thing. How does it work in practice?
So let's say you have a PWD who's employed in the formal sector. They've got a traditional job.
Right.
In that case, the premium contributions are split between their employer and the government.
So it's like a partnership, right? The government and the private sector working together to make sure those employed PWDs are covered.
Yeah, exactly. It's a team effort.
Makes sense. But what about PWDs who aren't formally employed? Maybe they're self-employed or unemployed.
The Act has got them covered too. So for those folks, the national government takes on the full responsibility for paying their premium contributions.
Oh, so it's like a safety net, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that everyone has access to health care, regardless of their employment status.
Exactly. It's about leaving no one behind. And it goes even further than just basic coverage. Remember those specialized healthcare packages we talked about?
Oh, yeah, the personalized care aspect. That was one of the things that really stood out to me.
Right. Well, Section 20A actually lays out how those are going to be developed and implemented.
Okay, so how does the Act make sure that those packages are really tailored to each individual's needs? How do they do that?
Well, the good thing is, the Act doesn't try to dictate a specific set of services that has to be included in every package. Instead, it gives PhilHealth the responsibility to develop those packages, but they have to do it in consultation with a bunch of different stakeholders.
Oh, interesting. So who are these stakeholders?
Right. Well, you've got healthcare professionals, obviously, experts in disability.
Okay.
And most importantly, PWDs themselves.
That's huge. Making sure that the people who are actually going to benefit from these services have a say in what they look like.
Absolutely. It's all about empowering PWDs to shape their own healthcare journey.
I love that. And I imagine having all those different voices at the table, it also makes the whole process more flexible, right? Like as our understanding of disability changes, as new treatments and therapies come out, packages can be updated to reflect that.
Exactly. It's about being responsive to the evolving needs of the PWD community.
So it's not just about meeting the needs of today, but also anticipating the needs of tomorrow. I like that. So can you give us an idea of what some of these specialized packages might actually include? Like what kind of services are we talking about?
Sure, there's a whole range of possibilities. It could include things like assistive devices, different types of therapy, maybe mental health support, specialized consultations with healthcare professionals who have experience working with PWDs. It really depends on the individual's needs.
So like someone with a physical disability might need physiotherapy or occupational therapy, while someone with a mental health condition might need counseling or psychiatric services.
Exactly. It's about taking a holistic approach to healthcare. It's not just about treating physical ailments, it's about supporting the whole person, their mental, emotional, and social well-being.
That's a really important point. And it's something that this act seems to really get. It's not just about ticking boxes. It's about creating a system that truly supports and empowers PWDs to live their best lives.
And that's why it's such a big deal. It's a huge step forward for disability rights and healthcare access here in the Philippines.
Absolutely. But as with any big initiative, the real test is in the implementation.
Hmm.
We've talked about the monitoring and evaluation process, but Section 3 goes even further, right? It talks about the need for continuous improvement.
Right. Passing a law is just the first step. The important part is making sure it actually makes a difference in people's lives. So Section 3 really emphasizes that this is an ongoing process.
Yeah, so Section 3 basically says that there have to be these regular reviews of how the act is being implemented, checking in to see if it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing.
So it's not just like set in stone and that's it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's got this built-in flexibility so it can adapt to the changing needs of the PWD community.
That's really smart. It makes sure the law stays relevant and actually has an impact over time.
You got it. The act recognizes that this whole journey towards inclusivity, it's not a one-time thing, It takes constant work, adaptation, and a willingness to keep learning and improving. I think that's a really important takeaway. And this has been a really enlightening deep dive. We've covered so much, from automatic PhilHealth coverage and those personalized healthcare packages to the whole system of monitoring and evaluation. But for me, what really stands out is the spirit of this act. It's that commitment to inclusivity, to empowerment, and to making sure that absolutely no one is left behind.
Couldn't agree more. Republic Act 11-1228, it's not just about healthcare. It's about the Philippines taking a stand and saying, we're committed to building a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final thought for today. Now that we've explored this law and its potential, what comes next? What can we do as individuals, as communities, to make sure it's a success?
That's the key question, right? Because passing a law is just the beginning. The real work starts now. It's up to all of us, government agencies, healthcare providers, PWD organizations, and everyday people like us to make this thing work.
So what can we actually do? What are some concrete steps we can take to contribute to the success of this act?
Well, the first thing is awareness. We've got to spread the word about this act, especially within the PWD community. Make sure people know what their rights are, how they can access the benefits. Share information online. Talk to your friends and family. Advocate for greater awareness in your communities.
I love that, because when people know their rights, they can advocate for themselves, right? They can hold institutions accountable.
Exactly. And beyond just raising awareness, we can also participate in the monitoring and evaluation process. Share your experiences, your observations with your local government, with PhilHealth, with the DOH. Tell them what's working well and where things could be improved.
So it's about giving feedback, sharing our perspectives, being active participants in making this act even better.
Absolutely. Your voices matter. By speaking up, by sharing your insights, you're contributing to the ongoing conversation about disability rights, and you're helping to make sure that the needs of PWDs are being heard and addressed.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely inspired me to learn more about this act and to find ways to contribute to its success. And I hope it's done the same for you, dear listener.
Remember, this act, it's a framework for progress. It's a blueprint for a more inclusive future. But it's up to all of us to make that vision a reality. By working together, by staying informed and engaged, we can create a society where everyone, regardless of ability, has the chance to live a healthy and fulfilling life.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Republic Act 11228. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay committed to building a more inclusive world for all.